Welcome back to the Queens of the Damned podcast. We're doing part 2 of our Farm Murders episode today. So Rachel's going to start off with her favorite farm murder. It's so sad that we have that many to choose from, but so yeah, take it away, Rachel.
Okay, so my choice is probably the most famous farmhouse murder, definitely in the United States, and probably one of the most famous in the world, and probably one of the most famous murders in general in the United States. Not necessarily because of the murders themselves, but because of the book that the murders inspired. So I am doing the Clutter Family Murders, which, of course, inspired the book In Cold Blood by Truman Capote.
Aaron's really excited that he guessed it. He was like, is it In Cold Blood? Is it In Cold Blood?
I'm so excited. So I'm going to go ahead and start out just talking about the murders themselves, and then we'll kind of get a little bit into the book, which I will say, I did not reread the book. This book scared the crap out of me. I would never reread it. So I actually did not reread the book before I did this podcast, but I have read it before once and would not read it again. The murders were committed in this small town, Holcomb, Kansas, and no one had really ever seen anything like it there. No one kind of knew what to do after this happened. It just really shook the whole town to its core. So the murders were committed by two men who had just gotten out of the Kansas State Penitentiary, Dick Hickok and Perry Smith. So when they were locked up, Hickok had this cellmate. I think his name was Wells. And Wells used to be a farmhand at the Clutter Farm in Holcomb, Kansas. And Wells tells Hickok that in the farmhouse, Herb Clutter, who was the father, had a safe where he kept like a huge amount of cash. They believed there could have been up to $10,000 in cash, which of course today is still, nothing to sneeze at, but this is in the 50s, so that's an insane amount of money. I mean, a new car is like $500 in the 50s, so $10,000 is just a crazy amount of money. So after Hickok gets out, he looks up this guy that he had been friends with in prison, Perry Smith, and they decide that they are going to rob this family. So the plan is to rob them, leave no witnesses, and then go to Mexico with all of the money that they're going to get. So they drive 400 miles across the state of Kansas. They stop off, and they see Hickok's mother, but of course she doesn't know anything. And because she thinks her son is like an angel and was wrongly sent up the river. I think they were both in prison for robbery, but I can't remember. But anyway, so they arrive at the Clutter home in the early morning of November 15th, 1959. So they go inside, and of course this is a farmhouse. It's in the middle of nowhere. No one sees them coming. They even purposefully turn their headlights off. So if any of the ranch hands who live in like smaller houses around the farm are awake, they don't see the headlights. So they go inside. The front door is unlocked. This is a small town in the 50s. Nobody locked their doors. And they wake up the whole family. So inside are Herb Clutter, his wife Bonnie, and then two of his children, Nancy, who's 16, and Kenyon, who's 15. There are two other daughters who are adults and don't live at home. They obviously survive. So after they wake everyone up, they kind of gather everybody downstairs, and they demand that Herb take them to the safe. Well, shockingly, there is no cash in the safe. It's like papers. Herb tells them, I don't have cash in the house. I will write you a check and take you to the bank tomorrow to cash it. I will give you anything you want. Just please, leave my family alone, right? So they don't believe them. They are convinced that Herb is lying because he doesn't want to give up the money. So they separate the family. They take Nancy and Bonnie upstairs to their respective rooms where they bind and gag them. And then they take Kenyon and Herb to the basement. Kenyon, they sit down on a couch in the basement and bind and gag him. And then Herb, they bind and gag him, and I believe they take his wrists and bind them above a pipe that's in the basement so that he's dangling above, like, this old mattress that is on the floor. So Smith and Hickok proceed to search the entire house top to bottom. There is no safe. There is no cash. So then what happens next is kind of disputed between the two killers, but, as to who did what. But basically they go from room to room. They start upstairs with the two women, and they shoot them both in the head. Nancy, when she is found, is turned slightly away, which means she saw it coming and tried to turn and get away from the gun and couldn't. And then they go in the basement, and in front of Herb, who of course has heard his wife and daughter being shot upstairs, they shoot Kenyon in the head, and then they slit Herb's throat and shoot him in the head. Later on, one of the killers, Smith, who confesses to killing Herb, says, "I didn't want to harm the man. I thought he was a very nice gentleman, soft-spoken. I thought so right up to the moment I cut his throat." Yeah.
Well, that counts for a lot.
Yeah. So these were, the title of the book is appropriate. In cold blood. These were cold-blooded, horrible killings. They end up getting away with a portable radio, a pair of binoculars, and less than $50 in cash. And that's it. And these poor people died for that. So the bodies are discovered the next morning by Nancy's best friend and her boyfriend at the time, who of course are both teenagers. They go to the house because they had plans with Nancy, and, they knock on the door, and when nobody answers, they go inside, and they start to look around, and they find the bodies. I actually read an interview with the boyfriend, who is still alive and who still lives in that town, and he's never gotten over it. Obviously, he's moved on with his life. I think he got married, he had kids, has grandkids, but this just changed who he was as a person. And it kind of changes the whole town. No one can believe that this has happened here. No one has any idea who would do it. Half the people think, oh, it had to be someone from outside the community. Half the people think, no, it was someone from in the town that maybe had a dispute with him. I think he was in a couple of land disputes with people. And so there was this idea that maybe one of them had something to do with it. I think the day that they bury the family, one of the surviving daughters was set to get married. And so she does get married, or actually I think it was a few days later, but she was set to get married around Thanksgiving, which of course would have been shortly after the murders. And she does end up getting married, and so it's just this really horrible thing that happens. So after a little while, of course this is all over the news. This makes national news. Wells, the former cellmate, hears about it, and he's like, oh shit, wait a minute, I think I know who did it. So he contacts the Kansas Bureau of Investigation and tells them, hey, I had been telling this guy that I was cellmates with that they had all this cash, and I'm pretty sure he was going to go and rob them. So, sure enough, on December 30th, 1959, they track down and arrest both Hickok and Smith in Las Vegas. They had gone to Mexico. They were not there very long because they had no money. And then they end up in Vegas. It only took a month and a half for them to be caught. So that's actually pretty quick. Especially, days before DNA evidence and all that kind of thing.
Oh my God, what if that cellmate hadn't said anything?
Right. Right, exactly. And I can't, to be honest with you, I can't remember, because this wasn't in any of the articles that I read, I can't remember if it's like there was a reward and that's why he said something.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's in the book. So after they're arrested, they're brought back to Kansas. They both confess. So at first, Smith says that he committed all 4 murders, and he says that in his confession. And then when he's asked to sign his confession, he changes his mind and he says, no, actually, I only killed the 2 men. Hickok killed the 2 women. He says that he lied because Hickok's mother was such a nice woman, and he didn't want her to have to think of her son as this cold-blooded killer. He also says that Hickok wanted to, and kind of attempted to rape Nancy, but Smith stopped him. Hickok, who is not a moron, maintains that he didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, he says, okay, so his mother doesn't want to think of him as a cold-blooded killer, but he's okay with admitting that the other guy wanted to rape the woman.
No, that was Smith.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Smith is saying that Hickok wanted to rape Nancy. Hickok says, I didn't kill anybody. That's not true. He says, I just wanted to rob them, but when we got in there and there was no money, Smith went crazy and killed everybody.
Yeah, that sounds like a more plausible story, not knowing what happened, but I guess I'll find out.
Right. So, their defense is that they were temporarily insane. They're examined by a bunch of doctors who basically say that's BS.
Yeah, that's so hard. That's so hard of a to get.
Right. Yeah. So the trial lasts from March 22nd to March 29th, which is actually tomorrow.
Oh,
I know, it's so appropriate. 1960. They're both found guilty, and I believe the jury only deliberates for like 45 minutes. They are tried together and both found guilty. So at this time, murder conviction in Kansas carried a mandatory death penalty. So they were on death row for 5 years, and then they were both hung on April 14th, 1965. Hickok is hung first. It takes him 20 minutes to die. Which, I mean, like, I'm against the death penalty, but also, no, you kind of deserved it.
Yeah, I
can't feel bad for it.
That's kind of standard for a hanging.
Like 20 minutes, really?
Hanging actually takes a while.
Hanging can take, because if you're lucky, your neck breaks and you drop through the
that's what I thought. But they don't do that anymore, do they? Do they hang as a...
No, they do a lethal injection.
They hung Saddam Hussein, didn't they?
There are other countries that hang.
I thought you were talking about here.
I think there are a couple states.
That's in Iraq. But
well, yeah.
I think there.
Yes,
I don't mean just here, but
I think there are a couple states where that's an option.
Okay.
Where you can.
I think it's an option, but I think that the governor can deny you your choice, because I think there's a couple states that still have a firing squad, and I've read about people who wanted to die by firing squad, and the governor has said absolutely not, and makes them go to the chair or whatever. But yeah. So if you're lucky, your neck breaks when you fall through the trapdoor, which is obviously not what happened to Hickok. He was unlucky and was probably strangled to death.
Well, that family that he tried to rob was unlucky too. So
yeah,
exactly. And Smith, it doesn't take as long for him to die, but I couldn't find any times. So. On November 16th, 1959, there is a 300-word article in the New York Times about this murder, and Truman Capote reads this article, and he immediately knows that this is going to be an A-plus story. So he gets the New Yorker to send him on assignment, because I believe at the time he had a contract with the New Yorker. So he gets them to send him on assignment to Holcomb, Kansas, to investigate the murder. Now, again, this is the 50s. Truman Capote was not married. Of course, he was very gay. But at the time, an unmarried man would not have been able to gain access to any of the women in town, right? It would have been inappropriate for them to invite him into their home. So he knows that he needs help. So he calls his old childhood friend, Harper Lee, who, of course, goes on to write To Kill a Mockingbird, which has Truman Capote in it, and asks her to come to Kansas with him to help him investigate this case. And she does, and she is able to get him access to the wives of the investigators, get invited to dinner with the families at the homes of the investigators.
See, that's where all the good info's at.
Exactly.
You know?
She knew that, which is why he brought her. And they are there for months. I mean, months and months and months. They go there just a couple of days after the murder happens, and they stay at least through the trial. I couldn't find any notes on exactly how long they're in Kansas before they leave, but he ends up with 8,000 pages of notes on the case. He interviews both killers multiple times. He is more sympathetic to Perry Smith. It seems like he believes that he was a little slow, which is possible, and that Hickok sort of manipulated him into participating in this crime. There's all kinds of theories about, why he was sympathetic to Smith, like that he had a crush on him or something, which I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of weird. I
kind of feel like really that's just being like, well, he's gay, so of course.
Exactly.
There's another man in the vicinity,
of course
so.
he must have been attracted to this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it comes across. So he doesn't finish the book until after they're executed, because that's how the book ends. The book ends with them being killed, and then kind of a recap with the investigators of sort of how this has changed everyone's lives. So it's originally published in a 4-part series in the New Yorker, starting in September 1965, and it's this huge sensation. And then it's published in book form in January 1966. And again, just this huge bestseller, this huge sensation. It elevates Truman Capote to the elite circles of New York, which of course is what he really, really, really wanted. There are a lot of accusations of him using these people's horrific deaths to profit off of and kind of make his life better. I mean, I would agree that he did, but I don't think that was his goal in writing it. I don't think his goal was, this is going to get me in with the literary elite.
Yeah, but at the same time, your words were, he knew this would make an A+ story, which,
Well, he did, but
you can't blame interest in it. I'm just saying, that's possible.
This story ruined him.
It did?
Like, Truman Capote didn't write after this. Not the way that he did before.
Did.
Like, he didn't publish another book after this. Like, it was like short stories, but he never really... Not with, like...
Well, and Truman Capote was not necessarily much of a novel writer to begin with, I would say. I mean, I've never liked any of his novels, but I've always really loved his his short stories, so... Maybe that was the benefit.
Oh, man. You know what's funny? I had a customer come into the store the other day, and it was this kind of, I guess, middle-aged woman, and she said to Cheryl, who's an older woman, who's our coworker, she said, "Oh, have you read The Swans of Fifth Avenue?" And she looks at me and she says, "You wouldn't be able to appreciate it. It's about Truman Capote." And then she turns back to Cheryl, and I'm like,
my gosh.
"Oh, dear Lord."
That's hysterical.
Wow.
Yeah, so which is true. I've never read any Truman Capote. I guess I should.
You should.
Definitely should.
Oh, dear. I was like, wow. I'm a little insulted by that.
So he's really disappointed that this book doesn't win the Pulitzer. He kind of felt like it deserved it. I don't know what won that year, but I could see an argument that this book deserved it, which is why I've never bought the theory that he secretly wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, because that did win the Pulitzer.
I didn't know that was
I've never heard that.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge thing. Well, because she only wrote one book.
Right.
So a huge theory is that he wrote it. But To Kill a Mockingbird did win the Pulitzer, and he wanted one so bad. If he wrote it, he definitely would have come out and claimed that prize.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Poor Harper Lee. She doesn't get to... God.
Yeah. So this book was kind of the first nonfiction novel. Again, like I said, nobody had ever really seen anything like it. This book definitely, without this book, books like Devil in the White City, all those Anne Rule books, I don't think that they would exist. I mean, I don't think there would be as big of a market for them as there was without In Cold Blood.
It was like the father of true crime writing, basically.
Basically, and he only did one, but he knocks it out of the park. I mean, it's a really well-written book.
I mean, if you spend months with a town and you have...
And years, I mean, so months was the initial trip. He goes back 2 or 3 times to continue to interview both killers.
I mean, that's commitment. You have to say that there's some sort of personal connection.
On this book. So it's still, to this day, the second best-selling true crime novel behind Helter Skelter. So, as I mentioned, this book scared the shit out of me. I got it as a Christmas gift when I was about 20 or 21. And I didn't really know anything about it, except that it was true crime. And I read the first 2 chapters, set it down for literally an entire year, picked it up again, finished it in a day, and then proceeded to not be able to sleep that night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think what scared me so much about it is the entire first chapter. So it's what the killers did the day that they're going to kill the family, but then more about what the family did the day before they died. And like, they don't know. You know they're gonna die, but they have no idea. And they're just going on about their lives. And something about that is just terrifying. You always get this sense that, if something really horrible were to happen to me, I would have some kind of, feeling or premonition or something, at least some warning that it was coming. But there's nothing. I mean, it's just a normal day. And you just sit there dreading the whole time for them to go to bed because you know that they're going to die.
You know what's weird is Miranda's going to talk about dark places, and I think Gillian Flynn does the same thing.
Yeah.
She recounts the day, like, part of it's been so long since I've read it, but part of it's like Libby Day, and part of it's like
her different parts of the family. It's the mom, it's
and then
brother,
parts of it are like what happened going up to the murders with the family, and you don't get to the end of who is the murderer until the very end of the book. You go through their maybe 2 days or something before the murders, and it's all normal shit, and some of it's not normal, of course, because there's stuff going on in the family and stuff, but it's like all this normal stuff, and that's what unsettled me so much about reading this novel, and I think that Gillian Flynn took a lot from In Cold Blood with that. I think she did, now that you mention.
I'm sure she did, and some of it is also, after the first chapter, it immediately skips to the bodies being discovered. They don't cover the actual murders until the killers are caught and they confess to what happened. And that part also disturbed me, was the 2 kids that find them. I mean, these are 2 teenagers, and they find their friend and girlfriend and her whole family. I mean, not just, like, dead, but, like, horrifically murdered.
Didn't they use a shotgun?
I mean, the mom was, like, shot in the face.
Was it a shotgun?
It would have been with a shotgun. I mean, there's nothing left.
Well, I remember when I read it was a long time ago. I was in high school, so I guess not that long ago. It didn't really scare me as much as it made me so freaking sad. It really, really brought me down. I loved it. It's so beautifully written. I felt like he handled the content amazingly. It really impressed me. And you could tell that he was really deeply affected by it. The way he wrote, and with his interviews with Perry Smith, he was, beyond interested in the man. I mean, I remember him writing about when he died, when Perry Smith was hung, and he really suffered through watching that. And to me, that's what made the book so great, was how much you could tell he really was so affected by all of it. I mean, it's amazing to me.
I always kind of got the impression that there was something off with Perry Smith. There was, like, indications of, like, delusions of grandeur. Like, there's, like, the section that sticks in my mind is, like, Perry Smith would practice making facial expressions in front of a mirror. Like, he could, like, sad, happy, angry, like... Like, there's something not right going on there.
Right. Well, and I think, again, I agree with what Miranda said, is that's really what drew him to Smith, more so than he thought he was cute or whatever, but it was that he was more interesting, whereas Hickok was just your run-of-the-mill criminal who thought he could get a big score, and that's why he did it. I mean, Smith, again, he's presented, at least the way that I remember it, is almost being a little bit slow. Not necessarily, like, mentally handicapped, but just a little slow. Like, a little off, like you said. Like, there's just something not right. And I don't know if it's mental illness, I don't know if it is that he had, like a really low IQ or what, but there's something not right with him. Well, I mean, you never quite figure out what it is. I mean, I don't think Capote ever figured out what it was.
Right. Well, what Aaron was describing sounded more like psychopathy or like sociopath.
But he doesn't have but when you read the book, I don't think he has the other traits of it.
There.
No, right.
It's like it almost like the way it's described in the book. It's almost like an actor training, but not like being like because there isn't a there, but like he is fascinated with his own face.
Oh,
like it's like there's.
That's not what I got out of it. So that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, because again, I mean, he has that sympathy and empathy for Hickok's mother, to the point that he possibly confesses to, I mean, who knows who's telling the truth? They're both liars, but that he possibly confesses to 2 murders that he didn't commit because he feels so bad for his mother, and he doesn't want his mother to think that her son could have killed these 2 people. Allegedly. I mean, that's his excuse. But to even come up with that excuse says that, there's definitely a conscience there. Because I think, a sociopath or a psychopath wouldn't even dawn on them.
I just wonder if this had happened more recently, if we would know more. We would forensically know more, I think. And, I think even psychologically we'd know more about the killers, so it's kind of like a shame to have all that kind of lost, because it could just say so much about the crime.
Yeah, it really could, but I've always just seen it as not even a psychologically motivated crime, just straight up, we're pissed because you don't have any money, and their plan was to leave no witnesses. So they went in knowing that they were going to kill everybody. And so to me it was always just a straight up murder of opportunity. You were here when we came in to rob you, so now you have to die. And also you have no money, so we're really pissed, so we're going to kill you in really brutal ways. We're going to make the father listen and watch his entire family die before we kill you in the most brutal way by slitting your throat first and then shooting you in the head.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
it's
scary.
just awful. It's awful, and I do live alone, but this is why I live on the 3rd floor. This is why I would never live in the country. I would never, ever, ever live in the middle of nowhere. And it's all down to this book, because it scared me so much and disturbed me so much that I don't think I could do it. And I could sit here and I can listen to true crime all day, and I can read true crime books all night and be fine. But something about this book just got me.
Was it the writing?
Some of it's the writing. I mean, again, like what Maranda said, I mean, he has such empathy for these people. I mean, you can feel the way that this affected him. And the way he writes about them and the investigators and the town, just how this, just changes everybody's lives. I mean, nobody's lives go back to normal when this is over. Nobody. Not the police, not the Kansas Bureau of Investigation agents, not the town, certainly not the 2 daughters that are still alive. No one's life is untouched by this. Even, like you were saying, even Truman Capote. I mean, his life has changed. Maybe for the better, maybe not. But I think this also drove a little bit of a wedge between he and Harper Lee. I think she didn't care for it. I read a biography of him once, which was made into the movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, which is about him writing in cold blood. And she just doesn't understand how he can be so obsessed with this case and how he can feel like he's almost friends with the killers. I mean, he feels like, especially with Smith, he really feels like he's his friend.
Well, I know that in Capote, he says, because Truman Capote did not have a happy childhood. Like, he had a really messed up childhood.
No.
He says,
ever have a happy childhood?
He says of Smith, it is as though we were raised in the same house, and one day I went out the front door, and he went out the back.
Oh my God.
Exactly. And it's of course, things are a little bit different in the actual biography. They change things for the movie, but but that point is still made, and it just changes everybody, and I think that was part of what disturbed me. And I don't know, again, there was just something about that chapter, about what they did that day, and just that they didn't know, and the way that it's written is just like they're making plans for the next day. And like the mom has some like mental health issues, like she's really depressed, but like there's a sense that she's getting better, but like she's about to die.
So it doesn't matter. And they're probably doing really mundane things too, and you're like,
oh yeah, like Nancy. The only one that I can really remember vividly is Nancy is helping a girl practice making a pie for the county fair, and they have plans the next day to practice making the pie again. But you as the reader know that there is no next day, right?
That's the nature of tragedy.
Yeah.
It's just... But there was just something about the way that it was written that was... Because in most true crime books, they discuss what the victim was doing the day they died or whatever. And it doesn't get me, but it was just the way that it was written that it just killed me. I mean, I highly recommend the book to anyone that hasn't read it. It's great. It's really beautifully written.
If you'd like to be killed too.
Yeah.
If you do not... if you no longer wish to have a spirit...
Exactly. Read this book.
Oh, we should probably start talking about Dark Places. We've already been going.
We should. Yeah, I mean,
how long have we been going?
35
about
minutes.
all that I have to say about In Cold Blood. Definitely there are some divisive opinions about it out there. Some of them I kind of discount, but highly, highly recommended book. It really is very good, and Truman Capote really is, I just think, one of the greatest writers that's ever lived. So read anything you get your hands on. Oh shit. Oh, sorry.
Are you okay?
I'm swearing out. I think my boyfriend's here, so I think
So links between the three cases so far. I'm thinking about so we have Western or Central Iowa, I don't remember, and then we have Kansas,
and then Kansas again,
and then Kansas again.
Don't go to Kansas.
I mean, there's something about that isolation, I think, that breeds this type of murder where it's just one family, just completely random, one family, and is just brutally, brutally murdered.
Hold on a second. Hey guys, I'm gonna have to get off.
Okay. That's fine. We'll talk about Dark Places. All right. See you later, Rachel.
Bye.
It's nice to
Bye.
meet you.
Bye.
Well, I would also like to say, when you were talking about, when you were reading those quotes about Iowa where somebody was like, yeah, Iowa's great, I didn't get to say how untrue that is and how awful Iowa is.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Iowa creates its own phenomena because it doesn't have any.
It's it's terrible here.
And then it kind of grasps at straws and tries to...
World's largest truck stop. Yes.
Where terrible things have also probably...
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that there's isn't there something trafficking out there or something?
There's sex trafficking everywhere.
Well, but I mean specifically at that truck stop.
Oh,
though.
at the truck. No.
Yeah, that's what I've been told.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very possible. That's horrifying too. So, okay, Dark Places. We're good. I mean, we're free. I guess we're free now. Rachel's had a bit of a tight schedule lately, so she had to log off early, but yeah, we're free to talk about Dark Places for as long as you'd like.
We probably don't, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the plot, because I don't want to give everything away, because it's such an intense ending, and like you said, it all culminates into, I can't even remember how many pages, but it's right at the end that you find out what's going on. It's just this big lead up until the end, and it's pretty much impossible to guess. I mean, even when you find out what it is, you don't even, you can't even think to yourself, oh yeah, it's not even that kind of a thing. It's totally out there. So in Dark Places, we follow a woman named Libby Day, and she has survived the murder of her family when she was a kid. And the whole book is about this family. And
Kansas.
Yep.
Kansas. Kansas.
Yep.
Note to self, never go to Kansas.
Yep. So, yeah, Kansas is apparently an awful place.
It's so flat.
Yeah, it is. It's really boring.
It's just nothing for the mind to catch on to.
Yeah. And so Libby's brother has been accused of killing this family, and he has been in prison for it because basically when he was younger, he was kind of an outcast, in school and in the family, he was the only male in the family. His father was terrible. He was practically nowhere to be found. I mean, he came in and out every now and then.
Just to ask for money.
Yeah, he was terrible. So he didn't really have, he was the only male. There were, I can't even remember how many daughters there were. There were, what, like 3?
I think there were 2 or 3, yeah.
I think there were, I think 3, including Libby. And so he was a bit of an outcast, and he found these friends that were into Satanism. And so,
although they didn't really know what Satanism was, they just went with the flow.
Yeah.
They were high schoolers.
Yeah.
You know. It was the 80s, by the way, which is very important.
Panic.
Yeah, it was during the Satanic Panic.
He gets accused of this murder, and Libby makes a statement that it was him, that she saw him, even though she saw nothing. She was hiding when it happened, and then she ran out of the house, and all she knew was that Ben was calling for her while she was outside, and she was scared. She didn't know what was going on, so she stayed away from him. And so she really didn't see anything, but she makes a statement that she did, and that she saw Ben kill the family.
Well, basically, what this happens a lot, even unintentionally, but the person who interrogated her led her to it. Mm-hmm. That he walked her through it. So you? It wasn't questions like, "What did you see?" It was, "Did you see Ben?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it was leading her toward these answers, and she's like 4 or 5 or something. Yeah. She's really young.
Yeah.
And so any child is going to say, yeah, sure. I mean, they're traumatized to begin with. And
and I believe when she was a kid, she was like a really, really sweet kid too. I mean, she's just gonna go with it. She's very suggestible. But the majority of this book, Libby is an adult, and she is contacted by a group of people who are really fascinated by murders, specifically by her family's murder, which is, I have to say, it's kind of incredible that she even talks to these people, because if that were me,
the only reason she did was because
for the money.
Oh, basically she's been subsisting on donations because she's like the miracle child. Like she's been living off of charitable people who find her story just inspiring, that she survived this whole horrible thing, and now the money's running out, and her financial manager is saying, "Look, you got to do whatever you can because it's gone." Like, and she's never had to work a day in her life because of these donations. And so when this true crime group calls her, they're like amateur detectives, and they say what Miranda was about to say, I guess.
Basically, I mean, they're interested in the murders, and they don't believe that her brother did it, and they want her to start looking into it. They want her to start contacting people. And at first, she just, I mean, exactly how I would respond. She's like, what the fuck? This is messed up. And she's not up for it. And then, she realizes, okay, I'm not going to get a job. I can't do this, because she is severely traumatized. I mean, she has a lot of mental issues and that's one of the things I appreciated the most throughout this book, is just Libby as a character. She's a really strong-willed and slightly mean character.
Yeah.
But I loved her, and there were moments where she was so relatable. I loved her, but she eventually basically just decides, like, I have to do this. I don't have a choice. I have to do something. And
the spokesman for the true crime group, his name is Lyle, and he's this kind of, like, dorky, shy person, and he's, like, super nice and super awkward, and I think that, like, after a while, he starts growing on her. Like, $500 every time they meet doesn't hurt, but, she starts going, okay, I'm gonna listen, because, like, he's really passionate about it, and so is the group that he's involved with.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the women I remember in the group had, like, letters from him, and they were, like, in love with him. It was weird. I thought it was weird, and if I were Libby, I'd be like, all right.
I love about Gillian Flynn, because she kind of bases all these things, like, she makes her own awesome plot with an amazing, there's an amazing twist coming at the end, but then, like, it's all based on real stuff.
Yeah.
Like, she's pulling from the countless letters that people send to serial killers, and the women who become infatuated with them, and either become convinced that they're innocent or are fascinated or don't care, or they want to marry them to sell their body when they die.
Oh my gosh.
No.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
So,
but I mean, and just an example, recently, the man, Stephen Avery, that was part of Making a Murderer, he was supposed to get married to this woman, and she was just in love with him. She had just gotten a divorce, and she was talking to him, like, you know, writing letters back and forth with him and talking to him on the phone and everything. She was just in love with him. And I remember she went on Dr. Phil and she was telling Dr. Phil, you know, oh, he's just like this cuddly teddy bear and everything. And she actually just went back. Well, she didn't go on Dr. Phil, but she wrote a statement to them right after she did the show. Stephen Avery wrote her a letter and basically like threatened her in the most disgusting and awful, terrible ways. And now she's convinced that he did it. It's like, why does it take that? Because he had such a long history of violence with women. And here she is, where she's like, oh, you know, he's nice to me, so, you know.
So I'm sure it's fine.
I can change him.
Who cares about all the evidence against him? Like, he's nice to me. It's disturbing. And we talked about that.
Women are angry at Libby because they're like, how could you think such a thing? And you're the one person hinging on his freedom and everything. And she goes, of course, to talk to Ben, and she can't figure it out.
Yeah, and I mean, she's so overwhelmed with it at first because she calls it, that's where the title of the book comes from. It's a dark place. That thought in her mind is just a dark place. She doesn't like to think about it or talk about it. And at first she is extremely overwhelmed when these women are attacking her and they're like, how could you ever even think this? And when she sees Ben, it's just so overwhelming for her. And those are the moments where she is most relatable, is when she does have to go into those dark places.
Right.
And rethink everything that she has made statements on or has always believed.
And it ends up making her a better person, whereas before she completely avoided this trauma in her past, and that now that she's not compartmentalizing it, and she's facing it, like, things in her life start turning around because she is. And you know, the thing I also love about Gillian Flynn is her characters are not likable. And I like that. Yeah. Because it's real. Like, no one is 100% likable.
Yeah.
And some people are even 75% unlikable. Perhaps most of the time. Who knows? You know, like, and that I like because I can, like, relate to it. I can go, this is a real person who's had shit happen. And it's just, it makes you go into the story believing her a lot more.
Well, and it's like those little things that she adds too. I mean, Libby is a klepto, and it's like something that it has nothing to do with the story, but you just see, like, every now and then she takes things, and she has, like, little collections in her house.
Like she has, like, hand lotions and shit. Like, just, this is my drawer of hand lotions I've stolen from places, and, like, keys and random shit she doesn't even use. She doesn't even need it.
Yeah.
She wears, like, one outfit or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and she can't leave anywhere without taking something. I can't remember, but there's like a few different moments where she's in people's houses and she has no reason to take something, but she just has to. So she just takes something, and it has really nothing to do with the story. I mean, there's a little moment at the end where it's kind of a thing, but throughout you're just kind of like, this is this weird funny thing about her that we don't even need to know. I feel
like it's the kind of thing, like, you would, I haven't read the book, but, like, hearing that story, like, well, that makes sense. Like, having lived this thing, it makes sense that she's gonna have something.
Like that. That makes sense to me because it feels like everything's been taken from her, and when she leaves a place, she needs to be like, it's almost like her keeping herself, like her guarding herself, her going, I can do something to somebody else, or I can take somebody else's property rather than somebody else taking something from me, which is the foundation of myself, because my beginning is somebody taking stuff from me. And now she's not even certain who. It's just such a good story.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic.
The other theme in this is really the satanic panic thing, which, because it's so frustrating because the cops are they're so fixated on this person who committed these murders was a Satanist, and you know that it's complete bullshit. And it's just like high school kids messing around. It's really not, like, I don't want to give anything away. I feel like I say that every episode.
Yeah. There's so many things you want to say, but you can't say.
But I think it's important for her to comment on that, where so many things there were so many false links to cases that happened in the 80s because they assumed it had something to do with Satanism when it actually had nothing to do with that. And I honestly can't tell you a single one, but I know I've heard it before.
Just trust us.
Where it's like this again. It's like this people. Something happens that people can't control, and they get scared, and they point to the first archaic thing that it could possibly be, no matter how stupid it sounds. Yeah. Witch, or spiritualist, or Satanist, or, whatever. Yeah. It's not that someone you knew in your small town did this horrendous thing. It couldn't be that. It has to be influenced. That person had to have been influenced by something darker, something deeper, something worse, because a person by themselves couldn't decide to do that. It had to be an ideology or a...
Maybe that's what's so disturbing about In Cold Blood.
Because it was
killers
nothing.
are just people.
They just wanted money. And when they didn't get that money, like Rachel was saying, then they killed the whole family.
Well, and we talked a little bit about this on the Manson episode, how people just have this issue with just accepting that sometimes people do shitty things.
Yeah, I know.
Like it happens. Sometimes there's no explanation for it. It just happens. But we never want to believe that. We always want some sort of weird explanation for it.
And I think in a way that's why we're talking about this right now, is that we somehow want to reason it out and make it like it's the same thing. We're all doing that.
Why do people do the things they do?
Yeah. Like we just want to know. And sometimes it's just because people do these things.
Yeah. I mean,
in Othello, Iago says, "What you know. From this time forth, I never will speak word." Like, I feel like it comes, for me, stories like this come back to that. Like, you're never going to find out. Like, there's some thing inside there.
That unless you are a person who is that way or does that thing, you won't know. Yeah. You can't know. And I think sometimes the reason we talk about this is because we feel a little bit of that in us. Not so far that we would go to do anything, but that we know that it's there in a way.
Well, I believe that anyone is capable of anything given the right pressure.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, and I think it makes us kind of wonder what we would do in that situation. If you look at a lot of different serial killers. I know when we were talking about Manson, we were talking about the women, and we were playing the whole, what would we do if that were us? And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of, is when they see, like, there's no explanation for it. They're like, well, if that's just like a person doing something bad, like, what would I do in that situation? And I think it's scary because we don't want to believe that we would do that.
Right. I mean, does that mean that we're done?
Oh,
I don't know, man. This is so
you guys
dark.
Heard of the Hinterkaifeck murders?
No.
In Germany?
No.
It's another farm murder. Once again, they don't know who it was that did it. What makes it really creepy is when it was discovered that the family had been killed, they were all kind of stacked up in the barn. They had been killed with a mattock, which is like a pickaxe, like a digging hoe and a pickaxe.
I feel like I've heard of that
The
before.
whole family and the maid, they're kind of stacked up in the barn, and then it looked like they just determined that the family had died on such a day, but neighbors were seeing smoke.
Yeah. Weren't they feeding the animals?
Yeah, the animals had been fed.
Where did I hear about
someone
this?
had been living in the house. Yeah. Like when they were looking back on it, like the father of the family at one point noticed a set of footprints in the snow leading up to the house.
Oh, that's the one. Okay, yes, I've heard of that.
And like there were newspapers around that he didn't purchase, and so like someone was living in the house while they were there, killed them, and then lived in the house in like another week.
Oh gosh, I don't even want to think about that.
I've heard about the footprints in the snow, and I thought for a second this was the Villisca murders, but no, it's that one. Like when I was researching this, because I didn't know anything about the Villisca murders, but yeah, I confused those two because there's just so many like resonating things.
Yeah, like I think that murder gets like in like podcasts I've heard about, like farm murders. Those two stories often get told side by side. There are footprints going to the house. Those are mine. leave.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Oh my gosh, I don't even want to think about that possibility of somebody living in my house.
I've been thinking about the axe murders for the last week.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not really scared of people. I'm 6'3", and people don't scare me, but the idea of someone living in my house and I don't know they're there,
that's terrifying.
Okay.
I'm gonna have a hard time sleeping after that.
Sorry.
I live by a big chunk of woods. So
go for the eyes. Seriously.
Yeah.
That's what if they can't see, they can't fight. I tell all my friends that.
I think that's what we should end the podcast with every time is Sweet Dreams, because
yeah, perfect.
Go for the eyes.
There you go.
Sweet dreams and go for the eyes.
Oh man.
Okay, well, Erin, thank you for coming to share your story with us.
I really enjoyed listening to your podcast. It was really fun. And you guys want to be on.
Oh, thank you. It was so interesting. So, so sweet dreams, everyone, and go for the eyes.
Yeah. Scratch the cornea.